Hey everyone, I thought I'd hop on and have a little chat since I haven't been able to get around to finishing the series I began about using artificial intelligence in homeschooling. Um, I did release the one video, the first video, where I go over a bunch of different ways that you could possibly use artificial intelligence in your homeschool, and I have partially filmed, and planned videos about many of those topics where I go more in depth. And so I want to complete those and post them, obviously, since that first video did spark some interest and some conversation. So I will do that. But life's been busy. Life's been busy, man. My parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, so they had a vow renewal, and that meant we had family come in town, so visiting with them and participating in all of that. And just this past weekend, my husband had his company. They do this thing every summer where they combine some business meetings with a family kind of mini vacation. It's not really a vacation because coworkers are involved. My husband's coworkers, but it's I guess you could think of it as like a conference, like a family conference with my husband's company for his region. So anyway, we went and did that this past weekend, and that involves some prep. They have like their theme dinners, and there's just a packing involved, and then the going and participating and all of that. So we did that this past weekend. It just seems like everything's kind of coming back to back, and there's no time for me to work on the things I wanted to work on. While I was doing all of that, I started focusing on planning for homeschooling high school for my oldest. He's about to turn 14. He'll be doing ninth grade this coming up school year. And while like the past couple of years, I've kind of dipped my toes into figuring out how to homeschool high school. I really went more full force into that the past couple of weeks in the middle of like vow renewal stuff and going on this trip. Like great planning on my part, but it just kind of gets in me that I'm like, I need to work on that. I need to focus on that. And then I do, I start just Googling about it. And then before you know it, I'm full into research mode and, um, downloading things and researching, just really just got into it. And so, so I've been busy with all of that. Um, but that made me think a lot since, in the back of my mind, I've been thinking about doing these videos about artificial intelligence and then also planning for high school and possible career paths for my son because it turns out a lot's changed since I was in high school. Turns out that here in Texas, anyway, when I looked into how kind of the public schools do high school, they do this thing apparently where kids get on sort of kind of a career path starting in ninth grade. Where they take classes for that focus. It's just basically a way for them to use their electives in a more thoughtful way or consider what might they be interested in doing as when they go to college and if they don't go to college, even just after graduation from high school. So they kind of put them on this sort of career path thing, and then the electives are, instead of just free electives, it's use your electives to uh, for that focus, for that possible career path or possible major um, in college. And that's, as I understand it, I'm sure I got something wrong, but that's what I understand about it so far. So that made me think even more about that for my son, especially since, I mean, I've mentioned before, I have a couple of kids who are autistic. My two oldest kids are on the autism spectrum, both high functioning, but that does put a different flavor on things like homeschooling and career paths and college prep, that kind of thing. So all of those things have been mixed up in my head mixing up in my head, and stressing me out, honestly. Tell me if you can relate. And um, as they've been kind of fermenting, not the best word, but as those thoughts have been fermenting in my mind and kind of coming together, I've been thinking a lot about um, the what career path my kids might go on, and how can you possibly prepare for a career path when it's very possible that our kids will end up having a career that doesn't even exist yet. Okay. um, I know when I was trying to figure out what I might major in college, back in the 20th century. My kids love to talk about how I was born in the 20th century. Yes, I was. So, back in the 80s, when I was thinking about all this, I ended up thinking, oh, I'd like to know more about computers. And remember, back in the 80s, like everyone didn't have a computer, and the computers are nothing like they are now. But I thought I might like to learn more about computers. And here's what I thought. I thought, well, like really, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what I'd wanted since I was 12. I really wanted to be home with my kids. Well, I wanted to have kids since I was 12, but somewhere around there, I was like, I really want to, when I am a mom, I really want to be able to focus on my kids. But, there was no telling when I would be a mom. And, it turned out it wasn't until I was in my 30s. But I thought, well, when I am a mom, I'd like to be able to have a job that I can do from home. And this was back in the 80s. And so I thought, not knowing anything about computers, I thought, well, probably doing something with computers, I should be able to do that at home. People have computers in their homes. And so now that's obvious. That's an obvious thought that someone might have. But back then, in the 80s, have I said that enough times? Back in the 80s, that wasn't really a thing. We're talking dial-up modem days. Um, I mean, even when I like graduated from college and had a job, I was still using a dial-up modem, not like broadband internet. And so I don't know why I thought that back in the 80s. It just made sense to me that people have computers in their homes and you should be able to do something on the computer at home. I didn't consider what it's like to have little kids running around, and how much you can actually get done and what kind of work you can actually get done when you've got your kids home with you. But it just made sense to me back then, and so I ended up choosing computer science initially. But before I actually started college, I changed my major to computer engineering, and that's what I stuck with. And I got a computer engineering degree and worked in the computer industry for 13 years. Hardly any of that time did I work at home. I did after my oldest was born, some, and it was really challenging with that job. It really wasn't a great fit, just the kind of job I had where, I mean, there's other jobs you can do at home, obviously, but the actual job I had as a driver developer working on proto and pilot units, it was a struggle. So anyway, back when I was a kid, thinking these thoughts, it never would have crossed my mind that people could have jobs like as a YouTuber, which, people laugh at, and it's not like I'm making any money off of it, but, it can be done. And people who really approach it as a business and work on it full time, and can really focus on it. None of those things are me, but people can really focus on it and put their attention on it and put all their free time into it, can definitely make a living on YouTube. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, even in the future, I think it's marketing, really. If you want to make money off of it, I think the average person, kind of use it as content marketing, and some people really make some good money on it. If you just want to make money off ad revenue, that's not going to be a feasible thing for most people. But there are a lot of people who can make good money through YouTube, either YouTube on its own or as kind of the marketing arm of their business. Um, I never would have thought of that when I was in the 80s, when I was a kid in the 80s. Um, what are other jobs that exist now? You know, a lot of people sell printables online. Um, that wasn't a thing back then. Online teaching, that wasn't a thing back when I was a kid. I mean, there are so many jobs that exist now that, like, look, artificial intelligence, all the things with artificial intelligence. Um, there's so many jobs now and possible career paths now that didn't exist when I was a kid. And so it got me thinking about, well, what jobs might there be? What jobs might my kids have, when they are in their 20s, 30s, 40s that don't exist now? And if they might have a job that doesn't even exist now, how can I even prepare my kids for that? Especially as a homeschooler, because I feel like in the homeschool community, so much focus is put on, I'm going to try to say this without rolling my eyes too much, and I will not be successful. I know it, but so much focus is put on this idealized version of life, and the idea, not idealized to everyone, but to like this certain group of people. The people who say the older the book, the better. Not true. Not true. I disagree. I disagree about that. The people that say that kids shouldn't be doing anything on screens. Like, yeah, I agree with not doing too much of anything, screens or otherwise, but um, this is the world we live in. You're going to be doing stuff on a screen, and we need to adapt to that. The people who think that a textbook is like this evil thing. I disagree about that. If it's a textbook of something I'm interested in, I love it. Love it. If it's a textbook of something I'm not interested in, yeah, I hate it. I don't want to see it. It's not the form factor, it's the interest. But instead, the focus is put on the form factor. I mean, there's a whole group of people that thinks reading a book on a Kindle is like the same as sitting and watching some stupid show on TV. Uh, like, instead of seeing a kid reading a book, thinking, wow, it's great that they're really enjoying that book, it's like, oh, they're reading it on a Kindle. That's awful. So there's this whole faction of homeschoolers um, that wants to homeschool as if it's 1850. It ain't. I mean, look around you. Not only is it not the 19th century, it's not even the 20th century. Okay. And how does that help your kid in the future? Um, it doesn't. So not that I hate those things, not that I hate the idea of reading a real book or of doing a craft or of playing outside. Of course, those are all wonderful and good. But, I need to kind of keep my feet planted in the real world. I don't have the luxury. With kids with autism, I do not have the luxury of, of pretending that I'm Laura Ingalls Wilder raising my kids, and then just in the back of my mind thinking, well, they'll figure it out when they're older. But at least at home, they're going to be taught. No, I need to actively prepare my kids for their futures. I need to. Like, I don't have the luxury to be silly about it and to kind of, you know, play Little House on the Prairie at home. I need to prepare my kids for their real immediate future. I mean, my oldest is going into high school. So I thought, how do I prepare my kids for a career that might not possibly exist? And I mean, I can already see some possibilities. I think YouTube or any online kind of teaching is going to be a bigger thing. Online marketing is going to continue to take off. I think it'll be changed some with virtual reality. We've got all sorts of virtual reality things coming out. My kids love doing things on the Oculus. And, Apple's recently come out with their kind of 3D augmented reality headset situation, which, we don't know yet how all the possibilities for how something like that's going to be used. We can only imagine. I mean, can you imagine going to school instead of having to go to a school? You put on your virtual reality headset and you participate virtually in a school. And I can already hear some people being like, oh, that's terrible. You must be around real people. And of course, yes, I'm not saying you live your whole life in virtual reality, but I am saying maybe for some kids, and I'm thinking of my own kids, who maybe they have some sensory issues or trouble, like one of my kids really struggles with regulating his emotions and when he gets very frustrated and um, overwhelmed by his feelings. His feelings just kind of pop off. That he's going to have trouble. He would have trouble in a real school. And of course, we'll work with him on that. But I just can't help but think, wouldn't it be nice to be able to do some online school where he gets the benefit still of a great education, being taught by a great instructor, some of the best people in the field that they choose, but in a way where they're not distracted from their learning because of their sensory issues. One of my kids really gets focused on one of my autistic kids really gets focused on his special interests. And he and I have discussed this, that I'm concerned about him going off to college where he's going to be just focused on that and not actually get schoolwork done. That's a real issue for us. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to, the possibilities there for online schooling right now and an online degree, but it'd be kind of cool to be able to do that through virtual reality, wouldn't it? So, teaching and meetings and all that kind of thing, and the people who manage that stuff, that's a possible career. There are possible careers in that in the future. And, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see. I've been focused on artificial intelligence, and a new career that has popped up all of a sudden is prompt engineering. And in the last video I did, I shared with you some prompts to use in order to get kind of the most out of, as far as I know, the most out of something like ChatGPT, to really get the information that you're looking for. And I'll focus more on that in these coming up videos, and share more prompts with you and kind of the reasoning behind why you tell the chatbot certain things or ask things in a certain way so that you get the information you want, or that's the most helpful to you. So that's a new field, prompt engineering. Because I know someone, and sorry, I've got so many itches. I don't know what's going on ever since we went to Dallas, this past weekend. I've just been itching like crazy. So here I'm just going to be scratching. Anyway, what was I saying? Prompt engineering. So that's a new field that's come up. Oh yeah, that's right. So, and somebody commented in one of my videos, or I think that last video, how it's like, oh, it's like talking to Google, but Google talking back to you. And it is kind of like that, using ChatGPT. But it's way beyond that. If you treat it like Google, you're not going to get the most. You're going to think, what's the big deal? You have to put in the right prompt and really think about things. And so that's why there's this field of prompt engineering. That's a new field that apparently a lot of people are looking for. A lot of companies are looking for people who can do a good job with getting the information they want from these large language models. And so that's a new field that just like a year ago, most of us wouldn't have even known would exist. So that's a whole brand new field. What else? 3D printing. One of my kids, one of my autistic kids, actually, this past year, he's been learning how to use something called Tinkercad, which is kind of like a free, dumbed down version of AutoCAD, 3D modeling type thing. And because his special interest is like doing things with Legos, and he's gifted in kind of visual spatial stuff. So I thought, since I have to think about how to prepare him for his future to help him, I decided to kind of lean into what he's good at, because I think if you lean into what you're good at, that's already kind of easy to you. Even for the average person, that'll be more enjoyable to you, and for someone especially who struggles with emotional regulation and frustration and overwhelm in daily life, it's even more important to kind of lean into something that you're good at already. And so that's why I got him started on Tinkercad. We've been doing a course, we're almost done with it, where he's learned how to do it. And he can use Tinkercad to then create his own designs and have them 3D printed. And 3D printing is becoming more and more of a thing. I saw a video recently of this guy who started a small business where he's 3D prints like a certain kind of lamp or a certain kind of clock and sells those. I guess you can sell them on Etsy or on your own website, wherever, Shopify, wherever. A unique creation. You can sell just the designs to 3D print, so someone can buy the actual designs and then use them on their own 3D printer. So that's a possible job to have, that a few years ago, a lot of people, most people wouldn't have even thought of. I even saw a video recently about some houses being 3D printed. Okay, like a house, a whole house. So I think in the future there will be more 3D printing type stuff going on. I mean, who knows? Possibilities are endless. Let's see. Training AI systems, these artificial intelligence systems. That's, a newish type job. Some of it is low paying. We're having to tag data, but that field of computer science, artificial intelligence. I mean, I know when I was in college, I took an artificial intelligence class. It was nothing and it was I think it was a graduate level class, and it was nothing like what we're seeing now. You remember, this is like the early 90s, maybe 95 or 96 one, so maybe mid 90s that I took this class, and so now, if you look into kind of what's involved with artificial intelligence, there's a lot of different disciplines involved in that, and a lot of different type jobs. So there's coding, of course, but there's like so much more to it than that. And the work of training these large language models like ChatGPT, the reason they're so amazing is because they are trained on data. So that's a job that didn't exist in the past. Let's see, what else? As far as artificial intelligence goes, I think there will be more artificial intelligence type appliances. So think of like a toaster. What does toaster do? It toasts bread. Well, I think something we're seeing with these large language models is that the reason you need prompt engineers is because there's so much data and you really need to narrow things down. And so that the average person can use AI effectively, it probably better to have software systems that are kind of like an appliance where it does a certain thing, like it does financial stuff. That way the information is whittled down and the average person can use that. Some copy AI, I think it's copy.ai. It's kind of like that. It has it's an artificial intelligence, so artificial intelligence aided like copywriting, business writing, that type of thing. So you tell it like here's the kind of writing I want to do, and it kind of walks you through that. So that's what I'm talking about. Instead of just something like ChatGPT where you have to come up with all your own, like, how do I get it to do what I want it to do? Instead, have apps or software systems where it does a certain thing. I would love for there to be, and probably someone like Amazon would be the ones to do this. If Amazon would work on their own AI system, it would involve them reaching out to all the publishers of all the books that they sell and getting permission to use the content of those books as data for a large language model, where educators could use it to create really good, let's say, book studies, lesson plans, that kind of thing. So everything from biographies to dictionaries to textbooks to just fiction, If they had access to all that, if Amazon or someone like them had an AI system that had like legal access, not like sketchy access, like is rumored for some people, for some large language models, but like legal access to the contents of all these books, not with safeguards in place where you couldn't like read a chapter of it at a time of the book. Like instead of buying the book, you say, you know, show me the next chapter and read that chapter, and kind of get around that way, where it had built-in safeguards um, and ways for you to do things you would want to do as an educator with a book. Come up with activities to do or anything like that. Like that would be amazing. So I think things like that will be hopefully more prevalent. What else? With virtual reality, I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool to have like we could do like a virtual tour guide where if you're not able to tour, let's say Paris, like you can't get on a plane and go to Paris for one reason or another. Instead, have some kind of augmented reality way of doing that, or virtual reality way of doing that, where you kind of get a tour, it's like you're there. I mean, there's just no telling what kinds of jobs there'd be in the future. The space industry is kind of picking up with possible plans to go to Mars. That I really do roll my eyes at. I think the whole thing is ridiculous. But anyway, I think that goal isn't necessarily a bad thing, because a goal like that will result in a lot of technological advancements. I'm sorry, I think I'm shaking my webcam, but it is what it is. I'm getting too excited talking about this stuff. A goal like going to Mars will result in technological advances and ideas. So, who knows what kinds of jobs or career paths that might come out of that. And so, yeah, the space industry, so much is going to come out of that. So how do you prepare for that? For a job that you couldn't even imagine at this point. I mean, even the things I just said, those jobs kind of exist already. Or, many of them do or could come about. So how about for the ones that you can't even imagine, where it really gets into Jetson days and you can't even imagine what those jobs might be? How do you prepare for that? And so that has been my struggle in looking at high school prep for my oldest. And so here's my current thoughts about it right now. And then you can tell me what you think. Like, how do you prepare? Now, I'm not interested in the thoughts of Luddites, people who are like, oh, I hate artificial intelligence, it's the end of the world. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I want to live in reality. You don't have to like it. You have the right to your opinion. You do. And I will defend your right to your opinion, but I will also defend my right to my opinion. And my opinion is that the world is what it is, and how do you function in it, and how do I help my kids function in it in a way that's beneficial to them and to society as a whole. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do here. So if you have some I hate technology thoughts, I would love to hear them. Like how what are your thoughts on preparing your kids for a career that might not even exist yet? How do you do that? Beyond just the basics, the basic, get the credits that kids need to graduate from high school. So my thoughts for my high schoolers, for my younger two kids, and these have kind of been my thoughts for a while now, so it hasn't changed much, are to focus on reading and writing, so language arts, basically, because of the ability to do online everything, including online video, teaching, Zoom meetings, all those things. And because of the ability to share documents across the world just like that, it's, our kids need to be able to communicate well, both speaking and in writing. And they need to really understand the writing that they read. Let me tell you, I work for a large computer company really large computer company, and so it was really dependent. It was really dependent on email, not just with someone on another continent, but emailing people like in the cubicle next to you, because so many people would be involved in these email conversations, and because it was talking about technical stuff, and so that's easier to do when it's in writing where everything's there. You can kind of look back at previous things, and technical stuff would be said. So it's really dependent on that. And I was shocked by how badly some people communicated. Everything from them writing one thing and me not understand any of it, like, what doesn't make sense? Doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not even possible. And then going and talking to them, and then when I have a face-to-face conversation with them, they tell me something else. So like what they meant isn't what they wrote at all. Like, not even close. So everything from that to not using any punctuation or even a mix of capital and lowercase letters. I mean, there were times I got emails where it was like all lowercase, no punctuation, and it's like decoding what's happening here. It was like a puzzle. Like, I'm sorry, if you want to send me an email, don't make me work for it. Like, help me to understand. Like, help me help you. Help me to understand what you're saying. So people didn't communicate well. And bug reports that some of the testers would write, that they put very little effort into them, and like the information wasn't there. Like, they didn't understand what was needed to communicate what the bug was so that I could fix it. Things like that. And that's now. And it affected the way I saw those people. Like, I wonder, like, how did this person get to the hiring process? It was a competitive environment. So I was like, how did this happen? And people who did a poor job writing specifications and all. But it's not just a technical industry where good language art skills are going to be needed. Any job, like any job. It can only help you to be able to communicate well, and it can only give you more options if you're able to communicate well in writing and in a video or a Zoom type situation. That can only help you and not hurt you. So that's going to be really important. So I focus on that with my kids a lot, especially since one of my kids has a language disorder, it's on top of everything else. So like, it's really important. So we put extra effort into that. And I've realized, like, for high school, that's just all the more. I need to focus on that all the more. I'm not going to focus on things too much like on literature. We'll do some of that. But writing, grammar, even spelling, writing persuasively, getting their point across, that's what I'm talking about with language arts, focusing on in high school. I don't care if they never read Shakespeare. I mean, we'll touch on it, but that's not something I'm going to spend a year on. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. Like, if my kids loved it, yeah, sure, I would. But for a kid who does not love it, I don't think it's necessary. So probably not going to do it, or I'm not going to do too much of it. Math. This isn't just because I'm an engineer, but math is important. Not just because we all need to be able to math, but because kind of the brain it does train your brain to think critically. And that is super important in the world right now. Not just because, critical thinking is the thing that we need to do, but, and not just for like future lawyers or politicians, but how about those of us who have to deal with all the things that politicians say? Like, I want my kids to be able to hear a politician and see through the crap. Watch commercials on TV. I want my kids to be able to watch a commercial and be like, be able to think critically about it. And having a conversation with someone who's very manipulative, the narcissists of the world, which there are too many of. How I want my kids to be able to talk to someone and realize when they're being manipulated. by a friend or coworker or anybody. And if they go and work for a company, I want my kids to realize when they're being managed, when HR is really having their way with them. I just came back from this thing with my husband with his company, and we had a lot of conversations. We've had a lot of conversations over the years about how kind of all companies are the same. They all want to keep their employees happy and keep their employees. The last company I worked for was the same way, and there's certain tactics that they take to try to convince you that like we're the best. Think of um, high school, going to a pep rally where it's like we're the best, like we're the best team ever, we're the best school ever, like that. And you think that that's done with high school or college? No, like companies do that kind of thing. We're the best company. In high school, you have your group of people who buy into all the hype. It's like, yeah, we are the best. We have the best team, or we have the best academics, we have the best whatever. And then you have your group of people that kind of like, we're not the best. We're pretty good, but not the best. Like, and it doesn't affect their self-esteem to not be the best, be at the best school. Same thing with companies. When my kids are off working for a company, I want them to be able to see through the hype that's thrown at them in order to manage them as employees, so that they do what's best for themselves, my kids, for themselves, and not be manipulated into doing what's best for the company, whatever the company is. I know a company I worked for, like the way they told you how to invest your 401k even was very self-serving. And I bought it as a young employee. I totally bought that house. Oh yeah, I guess I should do that. I didn't think critically about it. In the back of my mind, I was like, should I? But I thought, well, I guess they must be telling me the truth. They wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. And it took years before I was like, that was being managed. I was being manipulated. I want my kids to be able to recognize that kind of thing. So, the subject of critical thinking is important. It's something I want all my kids to focus on. But also, I think math, where you're forced to think critically in certain ways, to kind of break down a problem or break down what you're trying to do, can help with that as well. Also, with all of these new technological advances of the last few years, it's more and more possible for more people to have their own, instead of going and working for somebody, working for a large company where you're just a peon and just a number, and you kind of lose your humanity. And I worked for a very large company, and you just kind of lose your humanity in that, and are kind of at the will of the company. And so I would love for my kids to be able to have their own businesses if they choose. If they want to work for a company, that's fine. But the possibility to have their own businesses. And so math in the way of personal finance, investing, bookkeeping, that kind of thing, I think is going to be important. That's a focus I want to have for my kids in high school. Entrepreneurship along the same lines, where it never crossed my mind. Like when I was in high school and college, it never crossed my mind to start my own business. In my mind, it was like crazy people or brilliant people did that. It was always like, no, you go and get a job with somebody. And it wasn't until I was leaving my last company, I left my last company and was staying home with my oldest when he was a baby, that crossed my mind. It's like, be nice to have my own business where I can manage my own time and how much I work and that kind of thing. Of course, you start a business, you're going to work a lot. So I didn't have all the ins and outs of it at that time, but I would like my kids to know those things. I plan to help all of them start their own little business in the next few years. Not necessarily so that they can keep that business going for the next 50 years, but just so that they have the experience of it and kind of know what it takes to do that, and to give them a reason to learn certain things, so they know, oh, this is why I need to know these things, so that I can have my own business and live the life that I want. And then also another thing I want my kids to focus on in high school and even before that, in order to kind of help prepare them for these future jobs that might not even exist, is how to learn and habits around learning. Um, if you read about the habits of most like amazing businessmen and women, a lot of them will say that they have a habit of reading, but that's not the only way to learn. I think reading is a good habit, like reading to learn. Reading for fun, if that floats your boat, it does mine. But reading to learn, um, and having a habit around that. Not just a habit, but a mindset around that, that you're never too old to learn, and having kind of a humble mindset, um, so that you recognize it's okay that even if it's someone younger or less educated, if they know something that you don't know, to be able to go to them and figuratively sit at their feet uh, and let them teach you. So some habits like that, and then also habits around health and sleep and um, all those types of things, to kind of nourish our bodies and to take care of our bodies. It's something I'm learning about these days, that I haven't done too well of, that help you to learn. Like if you don't, I mean, that's something I learned when I had babies, that like, boy, you get dumber the less sleep you have. I felt, I felt like I lost IQ points, during the many years of babies and toddlers. I had kids with night terrors and all. If I tell you how little sleep I got, um, when my kids were younger, I know with my youngest two, I had my one toddler with night terrors and then the baby. And for years, they both woke up every night at different times of the night, and where I'd have to, like with them, the crying it out didn't work. Like I had to deal with, like with night terrors, you got to go and help your kid. With the kid who will not, who has such a strong will that they need you. Um, like just you have to go deal with that. So I didn't get a full night's sleep for years, and that really affected um, how well I could think, and my mood and a lot of other things as well. But so yeah, I'd really like to help my kids to develop some good habits, that will put them physically and kind of emotionally and mentally in the right place, so that when they are learning a new job, or when there are new things for them to learn, they'll be able to do that. One of the complaints I hear a lot now with artificial intelligence is, oh, it's going to take away programmers' jobs, because these large language models, they can spit out some code. And no, it's not going to take away programmers' jobs. It's going to take away the jobs of bad programmers, lazy programmers. You know why? Because the good programmers can do their job and the lazy programmers' jobs at the same time with a really good AI. You still need to know what you're doing at this point, to be able to get the code that you need from artificial intelligence. I played around with it just a little bit, and it's pretty awesome. But you still need to be able to read the code and say, oh, I actually wanted you to do this or that, or could you change this to do this other thing, or like you still need to know what you're doing. It's not like you can, at this point anyway, know nothing about coding and come out with a complex program or app or whatever, as far as I know. Maybe someone's done that. Even if they have, I bet it's someone who really put some work into it. So anyway, my point there is, if you're going to be lazy about something, then life, the future is going to get away from you. When new things come along and you're not willing to learn it, yeah, you're going to have a problem. Just like the lazy programmers who are going to be out of jobs eventually, because the good programmers have better tools to be able to do their job more, like in the same amount of time, do their job and someone else's job who doesn't apply themselves as much. So I want my kids to be able to be in the right place mentally, physically, emotionally, uh, to be able to take on new challenges as the world changes. And those are hard things to learn when you're busy with life. Um, when you got a family and bills and responsibility and all that kind of thing, sitting down and trying to learn how to eat right is difficult. Sitting down and been thinking, oh, maybe I should get those 8 hours of sleep, when, like me, you just crave that time alone at night and you don't want it to stop. So then you end up staying up way too late or reading a book way too late. Like, later in life it's difficult to learn those good habits. And so I've started kind of putting some things into place now to help to start that journey for my kids to learn some good habits, that will put them in a good place to be able to learn the things they're going to need to learn that I can't imagine now that they're going to need to learn, that I don't know about, that I have no way of knowing to help prepare them for that. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. What are your thoughts? How do you prepare your kids? What are your thoughts around preparing your kids for a job that may not, or a career that may not even exist right now? Um, of course, there's going to be plenty of careers that will continue. There are still possibilities, um, but that they'll change as well. So not just careers that don't exist now, but careers that do exist now, but will be fundamentally changed, by advancements in technology, new tools being available. I think it was my mother-in-law was telling me that back when the typewriter was first invented, people had issues with that. Like, oh no, that's going to get rid of jobs. Now we see that such a basic thing. It's just a tool. Still, people with brains need to know how to use those tools, even artificial intelligence. So what are your thoughts around that? How are you preparing your kids? Have you been stuck in this mindset of like it's freaking Little House on the Prairie and let's teach them how to make soap? Nothing wrong with that. I think that could be a really fun activity to have. But yeah, it could be a fun activity to have. But like, how do you go from that, doing the fun activities, to then thinking being very pragmatic and thinking, okay, that was all fun and good, but how do I prepare my kids for their futures, like for the real future in the world that they're going to live in, barring a time machine that's going to send them back to 1850? I wouldn't want to go back to 1850. My gosh, air conditioning and women being treated like second-class citizens and other races being treated as worse than that. I wouldn't want to go back there. I love all that historical stuff too, but um, we put a spin on it that if we lived back then, that we wouldn't appreciate it. We kind of look at it through rose-colored glasses, and let's take off those rose-colored glasses and be thankful for where we are, and figure out, okay, how am I going to help my kids in the future? So let me know what you guys think. I just wanted to get these thoughts out there. I will be coming along with um, this next video about artificial intelligence, where I go deeper into the academic objectives, like how to define academic objectives for your kids. I'm going to kind of compare it to doing it the old-fashioned way, where you like looking through books and figuring that out. As I've been on this trip this past weekend, I've spent like every spare minute, so hours doing that just for my rising fourth grader, defining academic objectives and thinking about how we're going to do school next year, and what I'm going to have him focus on learning. And so I've been doing that like with paper and pencil, kind of on good notes actually on my iPad, but you know what I mean, like writing things down, looking through a book. And then I'm going to compare that to doing it with something like ChatGPT, and how to go about doing that. So I'll be coming out with that in the next week or two, God willing. And in the meantime, let me know what you think about preparing your kids for the future. All right, I've said enough. I will talk to you in the next video, and I hope to hear from you in the comments.